Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Cheryl Carr, your work doctor, and this is the Achieve with Dr. C broadcast. I am happy to be with you guys this Monday morning where I'm here broadcasting and sharing information for pandemic recovery and overall mental and emotional health and well-being every Monday at CST, 10 a.m. CST. And you can find me on Facebook Live, and you can also find me and subscribe on YouTube so that you get advanced notification, and you can also share this information with anyone else you think might need it. Now, let's get into today's subject because it's really important. The practice of silence, talking about the emotion of anger, has really gotten a lot of response. And also made me very aware of something that as someone who practices as a professional in mental and emotional health and well-being, as a positive applied psychology based, industrial organizational psychology based professional, I deal a lot with when people come on, see the broadcast, a lot will jump right off because of the subject. They're not wanting to be associated with, needing mental and emotional health. I get it. So it's really hard for people to join me live, but they do watch the rebroadcast. And if you're watching this in the rebroadcast, I encourage you to click on the links, follow through with some of the information I'm sharing with you because it will help. I am not giving medical advice, nor am I trying to treat any conditions. You must see your own health care and mental and emotional well-being professional, psychologist, therapist, pastor for your mental and spiritual well-being. I am just sharing information based on my professional opinion as well as my personal opinion. But what I want you to know is everything I share with you is either personally applied, and it's always personally researched, validated using data and science methods to validate it. I don't just share simply my opinion. I make sure I know what I'm talking about. So let's jump into the subject today. If you read the post for the broadcast, you know I'm still dealing with and wrapping up the month of July, talking about the practice of silence, helping people to learn how important it is for your psyche, your mental and emotional well-being, to make sure you have moments where you turn off the noise pollution, you shut down, you let your mind, your body, your spirit rest. And that's what the practice of silence will help you do. I've shared lots of information. You can carefully research and incorporate the practice of silence into your own life. We have so much information coming at us right now, so much noise pollution. I'm encouraging everyone to take up this practice to try and tune into how you're really doing during this pandemic and how you're really coping. How are you dealing with everything? And if you're having issues, how to spot some of those issues and get your emotional and mental well-being therapy or psychotherapy or counseling, whatever you need. Oh, good morning, cousin. Good morning, Kevin. How are you doing? Huh? How you doing? Thank you for being here. So let's talk about today's subject. Do you talk too much? Has anybody ever accused you of talking too much? I go through it. Good. I'm glad you're well, cuz if anyone's ever accused you of talking too much, I think it's important for those of us, one, who have to talk for a living, can't be a quiet professional. In business, talkativeness is required. You must communicate. You can't not talk. And unless you're in a profession where, like you're an IT programmer or something, You can deal with things and not people. But being accused of talking too much can wound people. And also, it can make you false practice the practice of silence, because you'll do it as a way of subduing your natural inclination to talk. Now, it's a personality trait to be gregarious or loquacious or talkative, a chatterbox. It comes from your natural disposition to communicate. And we all have different levels of it in our personality. The only difference is somebody somewhere decided to try and tell you that you should only talk this much, or you should only communicate this way. Or if you're not doing what we think is the right amount of communication, then you're wrong. Or if you're not communicating the way they want you to, which is being nice, always having the right thing to say, which we all know is an impossibility. Let's deal with the male female thing. Most men, or should I say, many men, think women talk too much. I submit to you, they don't. You don't want to listen to what they're saying. So it's an easy defense. There's two things I see men do, very common. One, because they don't understand women's natural wiring to go emotional before they get to their logic and deal with information. And yes, women have logic thinking. We think. So you can't say women are illogical. We're not. We're just inclined to go through our emotions to get to logic, whereas a man goes through his logic to get to emotion. I also tell people, stop saying men are not emotional. I think personally, they're more emotional than women because they go deep. When something hits their emotions, it's deep. Women, because we're very emotionally wired, our emotions can be very shallow, very subjective, bounce around a lot, not make sense, because emotions come and go, they ebb and flow. And I taught about anger being a secondary emotion that comes about once you have a primary emotion hit. And when I started dealing with people being angry, one of the big needs in society and for us as people, it's a need. It's not a desire. It's to be heard, to be listened to be validated, to belong, for community. And when you're with another person, yeah, you can have moments of silence, but you need to have good, healthy communication skills. So that's where I'm coming from with this subject of, do I talk too much? Have you ever been accused of that? It can make you very angry when you're just trying to make a point or say something to someone and they shut you down. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to listen to you. Or you're a person who uses a lot of descriptive words to get to a point. That's my talkativeness. That's my root of my talkativeness. And it's coming from a great place. I want to be understood. I want to help. I want to share what I see in a way I think will help someone. And sometimes you use a lot of words to do that. So let's talk about talkativeness. Let's talk about it in a way that I hope to encourage you, because with the practice of silence, you got to come out of that and relate to human beings. You need to talk. And that is something, again, it is a deep need right now for people to learn to listen well as be quiet and communicate well and stop some of this polarized, angry, one-sided communication, trying to make people think like we think, talk like we talk. and forgetting this one important fact. They're not you. I'm not you. So trying to enforce what you think instead of learning to listen to people and maybe hear what they're saying. And it could be akin to how you think and how you feel, but it will give you a fresh perspective on something. Now, some people you need to listen, shut them down, don't embrace what they're saying because some evil intentions occur. People communicate with evil intentions. They communicate to get you to do something what they want you to do. That's why you can't shut off your righteous mind. You have got to think. And that's why I'm teaching some of the principles I'm teaching, because you need silence in order to think, and you need silence in order to form how you want to talk, what you want to say. And you should always practice silence prior to communication, because sometimes you'll learn what you want to say doesn't need to be said. And one important thing about words were used to create everything you live with and see. It began by God speaking, let there be light, and light came. That's how the world exists today. That's the things that go on in the world right now. People talk about it and they think about it in their mind. They communicate it to however it needs to be created, and then it becomes. So what I'm teaching you about, see it beyond the funniness of, do I talk too much? I did that to get through to people and perhaps hit emotionally with the fact that I know people get accused of that. And I always tell people that accuse me of being loquacious or that I talk too much, I'm saying something. It's a difference between you just talk, and you ain't saying nothing. But if they listen to why I'm talking so much, I'm saying something, because I keep my mouth shut otherwise. It's a practice I have formed over a long period of time. Back about 16 years ago, God got a hold of my tongue and began to deal with me about when I open my mouth, I got to be saying something, because you're accountable for every word that you say, because words are power containers. They create. And the big thing about words, you can't take them back. Isn't that interesting to you? Once you say something, you cannot pull it back from that person. It can be forgiven, it can be restated, but you cannot take it back. Those words sit in the atmosphere. They sit wherever you flung them at. That's why when you do talk, you need to be saying something. Something that you know will create what you desire. And for those of us who talk for a living, and being an introvert and a bit of a nerd, talking is not my favorite way to communicate. I prefer to write and have people read things, but got to talk. And I found out a lot of that was because I was always being accused of being a chatterbox, always because I had so much to say. And you've probably heard those comments before if you're a person who likes to talk. It's very pointed, usually by somebody who just doesn't want to listen to you or doesn't like what you're saying. And it prompts you to worry, do I talk too much? So let's get into it. Perhaps you challenge yourself to be quiet, to suppress your voice, to press down what you want to say so you're accepted, or so the person accusing you of talking too much is at peace with the fact that they shut you up. I've had people tell me when I was in ministry, stop preaching. You don't have a right. Women should do it this way. Wasn't scriptural. Wasn't scriptural. They just wanted to shut me up. They didn't want to hear what I said. your voice needs to be heard. As I've said often in these broadcasts, this is a time for you to achieve what you should be achieving in life. The world needs you achieving. The world needs your voice. The world needs your unique way of saying and doing and being. It is needed. Your tribe, your circle, people around you. This is not the time to suppress your voice. This is the time to make sure what you say is good and encouraging and imparts grace to the listener. It's not a time to be silenced. And I submit to you, a lot of us are either over talking or silent. This hopefully teaching will help you find some balance. So, have you asked yourself, when does the gift of gab become a critical a curse? When is it that you know you're talking too much? And it's not going to mean the same for everyone. Like me, I cannot be quiet. I have to talk a lot because my work, I have to talk to people. I do have to listen as much as I talk. So I need to be carefully calculated in what I say, when I say it, ask the right questions, and then listen well. So not everyone enjoys conversing. Men typically prefer action, doing. That's how they bond. That's how they communicate. When they do things, women typically, we prefer communication, talking, sharing of emotions, connecting, all of those things that don't necessarily require us to be up doing anything. We can just sit down, have a glass of wine, and talk. And women are fulfilled. Men will want to go play a game of basketball or golf, and they don't want to talk while they're doing it. You know, I golf with guys. They prefer that I shut up and be quiet. It's really hard to golf with guys because they don't want to talk. And, you know, I want to get lessons and talk and everything, but I'm learning. So some people think in terms of too much being just a couple of sentences. A lot of men are like, why don't you just get to the point? Well, again, women take information through their emotions, and it takes some time to process that, to get through it. So we give you a word salad to describe what we're thinking, feeling, or what we think you did, or how things are going. We're not one or two sentence communicators normally, unless we're trained. I've learned to do that. I don't like it. It doesn't feel natural. But in the workplace, you have to learn how to be quiet. So I would say, rather than paying attention to your actual word count, which I go through periods of time, you guys, where I actually cut my words in half. And I do that so that I'm conscientious of the emotions and the words that follow, so that I'm conscientious. But try, instead of counting your word count, or for guys and girls, counting what you're listening to from another person, like, oh, they're using too many words, it's too much. Why don't you focus on the space in your conversation and how it impacts or affects someone else? That's a great gauge. And I, again, as a trained mental and emotional well-being professional, I have the power to use my words to impact people in ways that aren't comfortable for them. I can be very pointed in my communication, very direct. And I ask questions that have people, sometimes they get offended because it hits a point or it touches a nerve. And it's carefully calculated because I'm trying to get to something and I'm trying to help them get somewhere. And I can't always be nice and I can't always be polite, and I can't always be fake humble or humble when we're really being churchy. I have to say what needs to be said. So that's what I encourage you to do for the next week. Pay attention and explore how, when you're talking, don't even think about, I'm not talking too much. Don't even put that on yourself. But look at how what you're saying, how it's affecting someone else, how it's impacting them. If you find yourself constantly in strife and disagreement and people not wanting to listen to you, you could be too harsh. You could be too self-oriented, and you could be not a good listener, where you just want to say what you want to say and nothing be said in behind it. I'm really good at controlling conversations, and I have to work to not get in my professional analytic style just so I can relate to someone. But when I'm after something, or when I'm working with someone, when I know they have an issue, I can be very pointed, very direct. And so I pay attention to that. When I get there, I watch how people respond to it. And I have to let them know, one, I'm not perfect, but two, what I said was for a purpose. And what usually causes discord is they didn't want to hear it, or they think I should communicate the way they want me to. You have to be very cautious of this. This causes a lot of anger and resistance and emotional unrest, and especially in interpersonal relationships and gender-based relationships, man and woman. Typically, we have some rubs when it comes to actually communicating and listening to each other. Now, there's different types of talkativeness. And these are some psycho blah, blah, blah that I don't know. I just want to give you information. You may already know it, and so it's going to reinforce what you've heard, or this may be new information for you to accept. One, everybody doesn't communicate the same way. Some people are not as talkative as others. But being talkative is not bad if you're saying something. Now, in the presence of many words, sin is not absent. When the presence of many words is not to help someone, it's not to encourage someone, it's not to build someone up, it's to tear them down, or it's to manipulate someone, which women can be very guilty of being manipulative with our communication. So let's talk about different types of talkativeness so you can kind of hang your hat on, is this me? Because some of us that are introverted, not as social as other people, we can become binge talkers, which is what I'm guilty of. Because I spend a lot of time in silence, when I do come out, I have to fight being hyperverbal, which is one kind of talkativeness. And hyperverbal means you refer to fast, increased speech, both in volume of words and pace of words. It's like I want to say what I need to say so I can get back to silence, or say what I need to say so I can stop having to be social and deal with people. Or I've been silent for so much and spending so much time in my head that when I do finally communicate, I become hyperverbal. I speak at a very fast pace, and I use a whole lot of words to say what I want to say. And I can also interrupt others when they're talking. Now, this is me personally telling you that. This is something that, woo, is so bad in society right now. We don't want to listen to each other. And it takes time to not listen to people so you can respond, but listen to people so you hear and process what they're saying to you. We don't do that. Talk shows, reality shows, everything has trained us in this society to talk one way. We don't communicate. We're just hyperverbal. And we're talking without really saying anything. You know, we're not saying anything. And we're just taking up space and committing word salads. And hyperverbal can be pressured speech. And what I mean by that is because you're talking a lot and using your words, you're committing a word salad. Pressured speech is quick transitions between thoughts. And you're not really speaking to communicate. You're speaking, thank you, sis. Thank you. This is important stuff. And it's the antithesis of being silent, is teaching people how to talk. But I know I'm in good territory. I know what God spoke to me all week. And this week, you guys, I have been called to talk on the national stage. I've had cameras in front of my face. I've done commercials. I've done TV interviews. And I've had to speak. And it's not comfortable for me. And I have to be measured in what I said. So I'm sharing with you what has happened to me. I had to have pressured speech. I had to be hyperverbal this week. And I had to make sure what I said worked for everyone and for what the purpose of what I was speaking and the words I was using, what they meant. Because words are important, not just what's said, but what's meant by what's said. So I encourage you this week, remember, I encourage you every week to focus on something. This week, I want you to focus on how you talk. If you notice its impact on others and you see a consistency in offense or people tuning you out, or you're not really saying nothing, you just talking. These are things you can fix without guilt, without shame. Men, stop describing women as they talk too much or they're crazy because you don't want to listen. Women, let this be an encouragement to you to control your tongue. How you say what you say. You don't have to cut back on words. I don't want you focused on eliminating your voice, suppressing your voice. I want you to focus on saying stuff that edifies and helps. Yes, sis, that part. This is a struggle. This is not going to be easy. What I hope it does, though, is it gets us all thinking about all that's coming at us, all the noise pollution, the talking, the shows, the things we're ingesting, and how it removes your ability to think for yourself, to use your righteous mind, and to actually communicate and love people, and to make sure, yes, sis, focus. This is focused information to help us grow. So we talked about hyperverbalness and how it occurs. And when you see people doing hyperverbal, where they're pressured speech, they're talking fast, or they're over speaking, they're using a whole lot of words, usually there's something behind that emotionally. Good morning, Deacon Charles. So Let's talk about another talkativeness, and that's called disorganized speech. Now, it may not be faster than normal speech, like hyperverbal, it's fast paced, but it can still confuse other people. And when it's severe, it can get in the way of good communication. Now, disorganized speech is when people are all over the place. I call it chasing rabbits, and I get it a lot in helping people and coaching people and counseling people because, like I said earlier, I ask pointed questions and they have an end in mind. And then people hear it, feel it, and then they don't know how to articulate their pain. They don't know how to articulate what's got them in so many problems. And that's all I'm trying to help us get through. When you are hyperverbal or you have disorganized speech, you have problems in your interpersonal relationships because you're not communicating well. You're either using too many words, chasing rabbits, squirrel, you're all over the place, that people don't get where you're coming from. And helping you by telling you to work on watching how your speech impacts others. Take note of that this week. That's your assignment for this week. When you find yourself communicating, become observant to the listener's behavior and response. Watch that, because that's going to give you some help. That's going to tell you how you're coming across. It's also going to help you recognize if you really listen and pay attention to other people, to hear them, to let them have a voice, to hear them. Now, this is a hard spot for me. I have to work on it because I do this all day for a living. The last thing I want to do is talk to people in my interpersonal life. So I have a tendency to hyperverbalize, and I'm working on it. People that are disorganized speech or disorganized communication and use a lot of words and they're all over the place, a lot of time they're argumentative. And that comes from the anger and the pain that you feel from not being heard. So you'll talk over people, or you begin to weaponize your words. You begin to use words that hurt, words that tear people down. And remember what I said earlier about you can't take words back. You can ask for forgiveness, but if you're argumentative or if you're offensive all the time in your speech, that's on you to work on that, because the words you use, you're going to, one, be judged for, you're accountable for them, and two, your words should always edify, build up, and put somebody someplace better for having heard you. Because if your speech and talk isn't beautiful, more beautiful than silence, you should be quiet. Okay? So, disorganized speech also can be tracked in my profession. In psychology, we can find disorganized speech tracked to some other issues mentally and emotionally, like schizophrenia, people that are manic, depressive, bipolar. This can happen when people are having a stroke. You can see symptoms of disorganized speech. People who have suffered a stroke and not known it or got treated, they become disorganized speakers. So communication and how people are acting in communication, pay attention to those things. They can tell you a lot. And hyperverbal people typically are ADD or OCD, and they have anxiety issues. As again, people think I'm an extrovert, but I'm not. My natural personality is very introverted, and I'm socially awkward, believe it or not. One, because I spend a whole lot of time by myself, and two, because getting out there and having to talk to people is not my natural comfort level. So you can determine this about yourself. If you notice that you have hyperverbalness when you're out and about with people, you might be someone who has some social awkwardness, and or you're fearful of saying the wrong thing, or using the wrong word, or not knowing something. These are all things that lead to hyperverbalism or disorganized speech. So another type of talkativeness that's an issue is when people don't talk at all. When you can't get people to actually open their mouth and communicate. They shut down. Now, I do this in conflict. I shut down in conflict. But if you're someone who has no voice and you just want to withdraw and you don't know how to find your voice and how to communicate, working on talking and having a practice of silence will really help you get inward, find the right words to say, and learn how to talk in a way that helps others. So, with all of that said, I pray something was said today that will help you. Talkative people, stop beating yourself up. Non-talkative people, you silent people who think your way of communicating is the best, and those of us that need a lot of words to say what we got to say, as long as we're saying something and we're edifying and building people up, let's stop all that. Just stop it. So this week, your assignment, I want you to watch people's response to when you use your words. Okay? I also want to encourage you, you're going to start seeing my next ebook, and it's called You Shall Use Your Words. And I'll be digging into this issue of communication, practice of silence, and learning how to talk in ways that build people up and help us with our need to connect and our need to be a part of community. And also, I pray it will leave a deposit in people to realize we need each other and we need to be able to talk. Words are powerful, not just what's said, but what's meant by what's said. So join me next week, which will be in a new month. Woo. We'll be in August. Join me next week, 10 a.m. CST. You can join me on Facebook Live, or you can join me on YouTube. Watch the rebroadcast. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click like and share. And that way you get advanced notification. And next month, you don't want to miss what we'll be talking about. Hopefully, I can get some guests so people aren't on vacation. And we will learn even more information to help us with pandemic recovery and with our overall mental, emotional well-being. That's all I want to do. That's why I'm here every Monday, 10 a.m. CST, YouTube, Facebook. Subscribe, like, follow, do all that good stuff. Okay? Thank you for joining me today. Hope you learned something. And as always, make sure you check the comment section. I always add hyperlinks so you can have self-coaching and further research. And don't forget your assignment this week. Watch how people respond to your communication, your words when you're talking. Okay? Bye. I'll see you guys next Monday, 10 a.m. CST right here. Take care. Bye.